So I'm super excited about this. So we're taking two podcasts into one today. Your Legacy Life podcast, which you've launched a while ago, and Playing Made Simple, our podcast, and kind of making two shows one, which is I'm super excited to jump in. And today's gonna be a little different for our show because you're actually going to be interviewing me,
right?
Which is weird on my show. But, you know, it's two shows being one today. So let's just jump in because I don't even know what we're talking about, which would be so fun on my show, which is your show today.
Yeah.
So let's just do it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah. You can get us started.
Yeah. Paul, you know, we've been together in this business for, I don't know, what, about 6-7 years now together?
It's been a long time.
It has. It's been an incredible journey. But having my son now join me in the business here in the last couple of years, he came to me as like, hey, Dad, we've got to do an episode with Paul and just interview and get into his mind and the heart behind why we do what we do and how we do it. And so he's got some questions he's going to kind of roll through, and I've got some too. But maybe you just want to start with just telling us, you know, how did you even get into this space in the first place?
Like become a financial advisor? So I never wanted to be a financial advisor. I've told this story a few times, but, you know, I went to school at Liberty University to first play soccer, and God changed my heart about that. Then became very passionate. I always was working in youth groups growing up. I was the crazy kind of door greeter. I was the nutcase, you know, that the leader could be like, hey, Paul, you want it? Yes. You know, like it's whatever it is. Yes, I'm in. And then I always had a passion for youth ministry, even in high school, and I wanted to become a youth pastor. And that never changed. And went to school, become a pastor, focusing on youth, but ultimately knowing, you know, all youth pastors become pastors, right?
Right.
So I got out of Liberty and then, you know, became a financial advisor. And I thought it was just going to be like a part-time thing. Like, well, you know, I need a job because no churches at that time were like asking me to be a youth pastor. I did get one offer, but it was like a tiny little church in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. And my wife, my fiance at the time, we were like, nah, that's not for us. And then worked at Morgan Stanley for a bunch of years. And, you know, long story, but I'll shorten it. The 4 years that I worked there, I hated it. And I got to a point where I was like, you know, Lord, something's got to change. Like, you know, I want to be a pastor. Nothing was opening up. It was crazy. And I'm like, what the heck's going on? So got to a breaking point in my life. And I'm like, okay, God, I prayed two things. You either need to change my heart or change my circumstance. Because one of those two things has to change because I'm miserable. Literally, like the next day, God began his work and changing my circumstance and taking me from this big world of broker dealer at Morgan Stanley that I hated. And there was just a lot of corruption and greed, and moved me into a smaller Christian firm up in Plymouth, Michigan. And then in the middle of working at that firm, God changed my heart. So he changed my circumstance immediately. 2 years later, he changed my heart. And he's like, hey, I called you to this business, which was really hard for me. 6 years into my career, at that point, it was a job. And then it turned into a career. I was like, okay, God doesn't want me to, he wants my pulpit not to be in a church. He wants my pulpit to be in this space as a financial advisor.
Yeah.
And then I just was like, okay, if this is what God wants me to do, then let's do it, and let's do it right. And let's do it with a God honoring spirit. And let's educate, let's innovate, and let's have some fun. And cause that youth mentality that God has blessed me with, that I just bring everywhere I go, I've brought that into this space as well. And I couldn't imagine doing anything other. Although when I go on missions trips and stuff, I'm like, oh, I love ministry. You know, I really do. But this platform has given me a deeper sense of purpose for ministry and mission work, which I would probably not have been able to do the same way if God had. I think he saved me from the church. You know, you hear all the time of pastors, you know, getting distracted and sinning and ruining their lives. And there's a part of me that believes that would have been me, that the church would have ruined me, and God saved me from that, saying, hey, I know you, and you can't handle in that environment.
Interesting.
So I'm going to put you in this environment, which I've created you for, and you're going to do great things because I'm supporting this. Even though I thought it was going to be this, God knew and said, I'm going to do this with you. And here we are.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really like how you're saying that in terms of focus of maybe ministry, that God expanded your mind to how far reaching ministry can go. It's not just confined to
Well, I
what we
believed
typically
early
think.
on that
Yeah.
if your paycheck didn't have a church on it, you wouldn't be considered in ministry.
Yeah.
God has radically changed my life with that.
Yeah.
Your paycheck can have anything on it. I mean, Jesus was a fisherman,
Yeah.
and he was full-time ministry. So, at the end of the day, this platform that God has blessed us with, is awesome. And we do a good job at it.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, this is a platform of ministry for me and for our clients. And it's my heart, it's not going to change. It doesn't shift focus that we are hired to do a job and to
Right.
manage money and to do it well. And we do that well. That is our priority.
Right.
But there is a joint purpose behind what we do and what we do.
Exactly.
And so it being, I mean, a ministry that you're a part of in its own right, not necessarily the, church ministry. I've always noticed with you, like when you meet Paul, like you always get Paul, you get your true self. You're funny, you mess around, but you're also super intelligent and you're really quick on your feet and you're always there to like support and help people who are willing to listen to you. And you're very transparent about things. That's one thing I've always really noticed. You're very honest and transparent. When did that become monumental, very important to you in your practice? And how did that start changing things for you?
So when you become a financial advisor, this business is a copycat business. So when you come in here, you're not really mentored. Sometimes you're shown a bunch of videos and
Good luck.
have at it.
Right.
Let your sales speak for itself. And I noticed very early on, not only at Morgan Stanley, but when I went into that small Christian firm, that I was being kind of groomed or trained to sell. And I hit this plateau in my career during the transition of when I knew this is what God called me to do. Up to that point, I was doing what I was either told to do or trained to do or thought I should do. And I hit a level of success and I couldn't break through it. And my bosses everywhere were like, I know you're here. We want to get you here.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to do a better job of what we're telling you to do.
Okay.
And I couldn't break through it. And then when I had this moment where God's like, this isn't a job, it's a career. Then I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, then I'm not going to do it your way. I'm going to do it the way that I believe and I'm convicted. So, which is more educational. It's just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not trying to sell you this. I'm trying to teach you that.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can learn together, then we'll figure it out together.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have all the tools back then. All I had is just integrity,
Right,
and character and belief in what I did. And it started to grow from there. My career changed. I crushed through that,
whatever barrier
barrier I had of success. And to the point where like my bosses were like, what are you doing? And they wanted to videotape my meetings. It was weird. And I'm like, I took my tie off. I took my suit off. Like I started wearing flip, I started changing and just bringing who I was into these meetings. And I think that's what people really want.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, they want somebody they can believe and trust, and somebody who is super passionate and convicted in what they do. People follow passion. People buy passion. And at the end of the day, I'm a very passionate guy. I'm super emotional.
Yeah.
So when I go into a meeting or I'm in somebody, I'm just going to bring everything that I know and what I believe to that meeting. Lord willing, most of the time, my convictions are rooted in truth and are accurate. Sometimes we get duped by people or situations. Sure. But, at the end of the day, I'm a fallible, imperfect individual and I don't get everything right. But people see my heart. Mm-hmm. And the advisors that bring themselves to this space tend to have the most success. They don't put that facade on. I remember going into a meeting like this years ago here in Charlotte, and a new prospect comes into the meeting, new to our firm, and he's like, "Oh, is it's casual Tuesday, I see. And I looked at him and I was like, well, would you rather me put on a suit and be fake or wear this and be who I am?
Mm-hmm.
And he had a cowboy hat on and he sits back and he was like, well, it's about the best answer you could have ever said. And he sits back and he goes, I think this is going to be a good meeting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, good Southern guy.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, from the very beginning, once I got convicted, because before that, when it's a job, I'm just trying to do my job. But when it became a career, I was like, this is about God. This is about platform. This is about the client.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, then I'm just going to tell you, I want to tell you everything I know and let you make the decision. And when we started doing that, everything changed.
Wow.
That's great. Switching gears just a little bit, but kind of in the same vein, you are also not in your passion for education. It's kind of been married to this other gifting you have in the area of tech. You are an innovator. You know, you and I share a passion for creativity, but you can do it with your hands and kind of get your eyes around ideas and put things together like technology. And so talk about that a little bit and how that all came about and maybe some of the things you're doing.
So at that point when I was like, okay, this is no longer a job, it's a career. I was like, okay, how in the world can I bring what I don't know? How can I not necessarily change the business, but how can I find a path that resonates with me? So at that time, we were a part of study groups and I knew a lot of successful advisors. So I asked my boss and I was like, can I do like a road trip and go to all these advisors that are coming to our office to get taught? And I was like, can I just go around the country and go to every single one of these advisor offices and just see what they're doing? Just interview them for a day. And he's like, why? And I was like, because I think I'm going to grow and learn from it. Mm-hmm. So I spent like 2 months on and off throughout the weeks. And I was going to like this advisor in Arkansas and this advisor in Florida and Texas. And I interviewed advisors like for a whole summer. Now I was doing my job and I'd go for like a day and a half. I'd like fly in the morning, interview them all day and then fly out the next morning. And, cause I couldn't be out of the office, you know, I was too important, you know, to sales. And let me tell you, it changed my life. And, you know, everybody was like, I'm so unique and this is what we do different. And then I go to the next firm. We're so unique and this is how we're different. And I was like, I just heard this. Right. You know, and then I go to the next firm. Oh, here's how we're different from everybody else. I was like, yeah, what's the other 3 guys said that? Mm-hmm. And I saw that everybody was the same. You know, they had a little different style. Their offices looked different. You know, but at the end of the day, they're all doing the exact same thing. And they're all using the exact same software, you know, or Excel. Like everybody was like doing something a little bit different in Excel. Because back in the day before like major software started to take off in our space, it was like just grassroots movements.
Yeah.
And then I compiled all these notes in and I'm like, okay, I don't like any of it. None of it speaks to me. Like, I don't understand how they're, you know, getting clients to sign up because nothing like makes sense. It's just sales. Uh-huh. And then at that same time, I had a client and we had our process, big client, like one of the biggest in my career at that point. And I'll never forget it. My son and I just taught him to like ride his bike and we're riding up to a Target and my phone buzzed and I got an email. And at that time I was letting emails hit my phone. I don't do that anymore. And my phone buzzes and I get this email from this client and the client says, you know, hey, you know, I know we signed everything. We're in transition, but we want to back out of everything. We just, you know, my wife and I were talking about it. They had signed all the paperwork. Everything was in motion. And we're talking millions and millions of dollars of assets.
Painful.
And we don't want to do anything. My wife and I were talking about the other night and we just don't get it. We like you. We like what you're doing, but we don't understand how this is going to benefit us. He said, we bought you, not the investments, and we're out. And we like you, but we don't see how the strategy is going to benefit us. And it crushed me. So then I went with all this information I had in our process and I'm like, people don't get it. They're just buying me. So how do I like help them understand where they're at? And that's when I created the retirement rate. Because I had, at that point, there was no foundational, no diagnosis of what was wrong with people's plans. They were just a good, flashy, friendly sales guy.
Right.
And at that point, I was like, okay, if they don't get it, then I'm not helping them see their problem. And then it was that weekend is when I reinvented or invented what we now call the retirement rate, which is a problem area, which then helps us understand what we now call the shortfall.
Yeah.
So the first fundamental aspect of that was the retirement rate, which was how much does your portfolio have to grow in order, like what's the rate of return that has to average over the rest of your life to not run out of money? That's the retirement rate. That was birthed that day.
Got it.
And then that has been really the catapult that's led us to where we are. So it all started with losing clients and educating other advisors. And then it's turned into, some really cool tech, but it all started in Excel, on a sheet of paper in Michigan, and out of the frustration that clients didn't get it. And most software is all assumption based.
Yeah.
And it's, hey, come to me and I'll get you this money or I'll get you that. And the client's like, well, what's wrong? But they're not even asking that question.
Right.
They're just like, okay, that sounds good. And I'm like, well, what's the problem?
Right.
And no advisor, very few advisors. I mean, our office is, I think, the only one. Most advisory firms out there, they don't tell you what's wrong. They just tell you what they can do.
Yeah.
Well, clients want to know what's wrong. You go to a doctor, you're not like, hey, fix me. You're like, tell me what's wrong first.
Yeah, take my blood and tell me if there's something going on.
Especially now in today's culture, everybody wants to know what's wrong.
Right.
And then they'll decide what they believe in on the solution. Like, is there chemicals in this? How long has this been on the market? We want to do our research. But first, it's like, we got to know what we're doing wrong. And this industry is notorious for just ignoring that. They just sidestep it. Oh, this is what you got? Well, you need this. And then we change that.
Right.
And I'll never forget that in that parking lot with my son and his green little bike. And, just looking at it, and he looks at me and he's like, Dad, what's wrong? He saw it on my face, and I'm like, nothing, just a work thing. And I was like, stink. I just lost this huge client. They really liked me.
Yeah.
And they told me they liked me, but they didn't.
You hit the nail on the head there when you said, like, in this world, people are presented solution before they're presented problem.
They're never presented the problem.
Right. And
in financial space.
And people are always looking for, they're always looking for a solution, not even just in finance, but in the world and the culture today. People are looking for a solution for something they don't even know necessarily specifically what's wrong.
They can feel it.
But they can feel it, right? And so you taking your innovation and technology and focus on education and pinpointing their shortfall or what their problem is, right? Have you seen that specifically set you guys apart or set you apart from the rest of the industry?
So Kevin, another advisor here,
he
calls it the aha moment, or he originally called it the look. So how many times in your life have you had that situation where just the light bulb just bing, and you're just like, oh, one of my old pastors in Charlotte here, he said the most used word in heaven is going to be, oh, that's why you did that.
Yeah.
And I feel like in our space, what has set us apart is giving investors that aha moment. When you show them the shortfall, when you introduce them to either the retirement rate or the next version of that, which is the shortfall, there's that's why I feel the way I do. Investors alike, they're just I'm talking to my neighbor, I'm talking to my friends, I'm looking online because I don't know there's something wrong, but I don't feel like it's right. Do I have enough? They ask all these questions, and you look around all the marketing and it's it's just solution based. Nobody's marketing figuring out what's wrong. And then when they come in and you show them that shortfall and then you show them solutions that can fix it, they're just like, where have you been?
Yeah.
Why is nobody else helping me understand this?
Right.
And I think what set us apart is the fact that, first and foremost, we're showing the problem. We're helping investors understand that. But then we're backing in and educating them on why certain solutions work and certain solutions don't. I used to teach this curriculum years ago called Show Bad Recommendations. Not give bad recommendations.
Yeah.
Show them, educate. Because people should know why something doesn't work, just like they should know why something does work.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and I think what set us apart is that we're not only helping people understand their problem, but we're showing different recommendations or different strategies on what works, what doesn't, and why. So we're like bringing the horse to water,
Yeah.
you know, and letting them drink for themselves instead of saying, you know, buy our solutions and here's why we're better than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
We've been doing, you know, training here the last couple of days, and like we're in different breakout sessions and doing different things. And what do you keep hearing me say time and time again? Stop selling.
Yeah.
Right.
Educate.
Right.
You know, this isn't a sales process. This is school.
Right.
We're here to teach because people have an affinity to teachers, and your life gets changed by teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Your life doesn't get changed by salespeople.
Right.
So if you want to impact somebody, teach them something.
Right.
If you want to make a good living, sell something. I don't want that.
Right.
Right.
Like, I've been somewhat successful at sales. My life and the lives of our clients have been completely changed when I've turned this firm into a teaching firm.
Yeah.
And that's where my heart is.
Yeah.
Is teaching.
I remember, speaking of our like training, like our fall classic last year, we were together. You had made a statement when we were talking about some of the tech we were doing for advisors and for the clients. You'd said that your heart was to make technology that brings people together.
Yes.
I remember that line. I wrote it down and I was like, that's a good line. So with that and with what you're talking about, just as we kind of close out today, what's next? What's coming in that, with that heart and that mission? What's coming?
So were you on the Client Connect?
I was.
Okay. So earlier this year, I got really inspired. And I feel like God gave me this awesome vision in one of my solo days. Actually, I got inspired before my solo day. And then I was just kind of praying through, you know, what God has for us in the future. And we're just building out this new space. And even before we moved in, and then, you know, we signed a 5-year lease here. And I can tell you where I believe God's taken this firm is we are wholeheartedly community based. And I believe this firm and God's direction for this firm, unless he changes it, is going to be more passionate about community than ever. And I feel like we're, to a degree, the best kept secret.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, it's hard to make a dent in this space.
Sure.
It takes a lot of money, and we're not going to make any Super Bowl commercials anytime soon, you know? You know, so competing against the big boys in this space is really challenging. So one of the visions that I feel like we're being pulled towards is really creating a space that brings community together, not only with technology, but with structure.
Sure.
And I want to build a gigantic like shell of a space. So picture like industrial park where you have like these, there tends to be like go-kart places or like car places where you like go in and it's just, you walk in and it's like 2 stories up and then there's just stuff everywhere. They're just gigantic shells, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to build one of those that doesn't look so blah on the outside. And have like 2 or 3 stories inside the building. And I want spaces for like our office, like advisor offices and a bunch of conference rooms and podcast studios and all the fun stuff that we use now. But then when you get out of that little section, then that would be like, you know, a tiny little section of this grand space. Then there would be like a basketball court or 2, pickleball courts, tennis courts, inside, outside, whatever. And then spaces for CrossFit gyms, normal gym, chiropractor space, medical space, dental space, whatever, where we can bring health and wealth labs. And I want to call this place the lab, but the entire space would be out, in my opinion, what people care the most about, their health and their money.
Mm.
So let's bring a space together where we can partner with other doctors, with other physicians, with other sports and gyms and all these types of people. We can get instructors in here. This isn't their business. They'll have their business, but they'll come in and do instructions or classes in our space, I'm not even worried about renting it. This isn't like a way for us to make money. This is a way for us to create community.
Yeah.
So I've been talking to about a dozen or so other business owners around this area, sharing this idea. Like, what would you be in? And nobody has even asked, like, well, would you rent it? They're all like, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because what happens, if you think about going to a mall, do they spread the food out or do they put it all into a court?
Yeah.
You think about an auto bond,
Yeah.
an area where they sell cars. Is it one dealership or do they all show up?
Right.
Why do they do that? You think behind that. It's because the competition is better when everything's together. Well, I don't want competition. I want community. So if we just bring all of these things together into under one roof at different times. So there might be a tennis class that's on a Tuesday at 10, a pickleball that's on a Wednesday at 9. We're not going to be running pickleball all day, every day. I don't think. But the reality is it could be. So this facility could open at 6 a.m. and then close at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And there's only closed for 4 hours a day.
Right.
So we have community where all things are happening all the time. And they're like, hey, I'm going here to play pickleball. And they're like, hey, I just met this awesome chiropractor or this cool dentist or whatever. And they're not necessarily doing procedures there, but they're running classes on good hygiene, or there could be
Nutrition.
like masseuses, nutrition, all kinds of stuff there. I get excited just thinking about this.
Yeah.
I haven't mapped it all out, but I see the vision of what I can do. I can tell you what it looks like, with the outside, with the inside. I can see the flow of everything, and it's kind of like when Main Street USA was opened in Walt Disney World in the 60s, 70s. Walt Disney didn't get to he died before it opened. And his wife was walking down Main Street, USA, all by herself the first day it was opened, arm in arm with her best friend. And her best friend leans over to Miss Disney and says, I don't remember her name, and says, it's a shame that Walt wasn't here to see this. And then her response was amazing. She goes, he did. Because if he didn't, nobody else would be able to see this.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel about my little thing. Like I can see it. I know exactly what it's going to look like, how it's going to operate. Even though I don't have all the minute details ironed out at this moment, I can see how we could have this amazing place of community, not let alone how many shows could we have and different things and cross over to know there's like 19 other experts in their field and what could cross over and how much education could we create? Because at the end of the day, it's not a place for profit, although money will be made. It's a place of education and bringing people together on two huge things, which I have nothing to do with health, but I care so much about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And those people get to leave that facility maybe with their lives changed into a new direction completely.
And how many things could they learn or get experience to, or
changes them.
Yeah. And there's like, this is great. Like I wouldn't want to leave. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do pickleball. I'm going to do basketball. I'm going to do, I'm going to do CrossFit. I'm like, my wife would be like, I got to come to the lab just to hang out with you, but I mean that facetiously.
Of course.
But at the end of the day, we're all in on community and education. And we're trying to figure out, even in a situation like this, how do we bring people together online?
Right.
In an isolated world.
Right.
How do we bring people together in areas? Maybe it starts in Charlotte and then maybe we have these facilities all over the United States.
Right.
I'm not going to go that area yet, but I mean, how cool would this be? Will this be?
Right.
Paul, thanks so much for taking the time to do this with us.
This has been a lot of fun. Even though we're on joint shows, I'm super excited about where God's taken this place, this firm. I love working with all these advisors. I mean, we've gotten a lot closer. I spent a lot more time together.
Yeah.
And this is great. Thanks for letting me on your show, and thanks for being on mine.